History isn't only shaped by treaties, revolutions, or great inventions. Sometimes it pivots on the echo of a gunshot, a flash of a dagger, or the silencing of a single voice. Assassinations are sudden, shocking, and often world-changing. They topple leaders and empires and ignite wars. In this video, we count down the top 5 most shocking assassinations in history. Each event didn't just claim a life, it altered the destiny of nations. Julius Caesar, 44 through BCE. Rome stood at the height of its power, but its republic was crumbling. Julius Caesar, the brilliant general who conquered Gaul and defied the Senate, had risen to near absolute control. To many Romans, he was a savior. To others, a tyrant in the making. On the fateful Ides of March, Caesar entered the theater of Pompey where the Senate was gathered. What he did not know was that a conspiracy of more than 60 senators awaited him. They had convinced themselves that by killing Caesar, they could save the Republic. But this was no ordinary assassination. It was a betrayal by friends. Among them was Brutus, a man Caesar considered almost like a son. As the conspirators plunged their daggers into him, 23 wounds in all, Caesar is said to have uttered the immortal words, "Et tu, Brute?" before falling at the foot of a statue. The conspirators thought Rome would cheer their act. Instead, it descended into chaos. Civil wars erupted, blood flowed across the empire, and Caesar's grandnephew Octavian, later Augustus, rose to power as Rome's first emperor. Ironically, Caesar's death destroyed the republic the assassins claimed they were saving. 4. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, 1914. On June 28, 1914, a summer day in Sarajevo, an assassination took place that would ignite the deadliest war the world had ever seen. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie were touring the city when members of a secret nationalist group called the Black Hand plotted to kill him. 3. Abraham Lincoln, 1865. The American Civil War had finally ended. The Union was preserved, slavery abolished, and the United States stood at the threshold of rebuilding. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president, had carried the weight of the nation through its darkest years. On April 14, 1865, he attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. But in the shadows lurked John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor and Confederate sympathizer who saw Lincoln as a tyrant. Booth slipped into Lincoln's box and fired a single shot to the back of his head. The president slumped forward, mortally wounded, as the audience screamed in horror. Booth leaped onto the stage, shouting, "Sic semper tyrannis, are thus always to tyrants," and fled into the night. Lincoln died the next morning, becoming the first U.S. president to be assassinated. His death was a devastating blow to a nation still bleeding from war. While Reconstruction limped forward, it lacked Lincoln's steady hand of reconciliation. The country would spend decades struggling with racial tension and division. Booth himself was hunted down and killed days later, but the damage was done. Lincoln had dreamed of binding America's wounds. His assassination ensured those wounds would scar instead. Earlier that morning, an attempt failed. A bomb was thrown but missed. Fate, however, had other plans. Hours later, while the Archduke's car took a wrong turn, Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old Bosnian Serb, found himself face-to-face with his target. He fired 2 shots, killing both the Archduke and his wife. Those bullets didn't just kill 2 people, they lit the fuse on World War I. Within weeks, alliances were triggered. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Russia mobilized. Germany joined. France and Britain followed. The world plunged into 4 years of mechanized slaughter, leaving more than 16 million dead. The young assassin likely never imagined the scale of destruction his act would cause. But his bullets ended empires, the Austro-Hungarian, the Ottoman, the Russian, and the German. And they ushered in a new, brutal century of global conflict. Martin Luther King Jr., 1968. By the 1960s, Martin Luther King Jr. had become more than a man. He was a symbol of justice, equality, and peaceful resistance. Through nonviolent protest, he led marches, gave speeches, and brought the civil rights movement to the forefront of American life. His dream was not just for African Americans, but for all humanity, to judge one another by the content of character, not the color of skin. But on April 4, 1968, while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, King was shot by James Earl Ray, a fugitive drifter. The bullet struck King in the neck. He collapsed, and within an hour he was gone, The nation erupted in grief and rage. Riots swept across more than 100 American cities. Yet even in death, King's dream could not be silenced. His assassination became a rallying cry for equality and human rights. The tragedy was not just the loss of a man, but the extinguishing of a living symbol of hope. Still, his legacy endured. His words are still quoted, his marches studied, and his dream still inspires millions across the globe. 1. John F. Kennedy, 1963. On November 22, 1963, Dallas, Texas, was filled with cheers as President John F. Kennedy's motorcade drove through Dealey Plaza. The young president represented a new era of American optimism, youth, energy, and ambition. But in seconds, all of that was shattered. Gunfire cracked. Kennedy was struck twice, the fatal bullet hitting his head. First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy's horror was captured in real time as the motorcade sped away. Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested, but his motives remained shrouded in mystery. Just days later, Oswald himself was killed live on television by nightclub owner Jack Ruby, deepening suspicions of a wider conspiracy. Was it a lone gunman? The Mafia? The CIA? The Soviet Union? The truth remains debated to this day. Kennedy's death shocked not only America, but the entire world. He was just 46 years old, full of promise, and the embodiment of the American century. His assassination marked the end of innocence for a generation and left behind a trail of unanswered questions that still haunt history. So the conclusion is from Caesar, S. fall in Rome, to Kennedy, S. assassination in Dallas. Each of these moments reminds us how fragile leadership can be, and how a single bullet or blade can reshape entire nations. Assassinations are never just the end of one life. They are the beginning of a ripple effect that changes history forever.